Hello and welcome back to Talking Europe. The fallout continues from Emmanuel Macron's remarks about China and the US. On his way back from a state visit to China in early April, the French president said that Europe should not be a follower of either Washington or Beijing or get caught up in any escalation. Despite the backlash from that on both sides of the Atlantic, he stood by the comments, saying on a trip to the Netherlands that being a US ally does not mean being a vassal. Macron insists that the French line on Taiwan has not changed, but China hawks in Europe and in America have continued to criticize him, and some have even suggested that Macron inadvertently set the stage for the Chinese ambassador to France questioning the sovereignty of ex-Soviet states, something that has caused uproar in the EU. Of course, the ambassador might well have made his assertion regardless of anything that Macron did or said in China. To discuss all this, I'm joined by Reinhard Bütikofer, a German MEP who chairs the delegation for relations with the People's Republic of China. He's from the group of the Greens. Welcome to you. And I'm also joined by Sandro Gozzi, an Italian politician who represents France on the list of Emmanuel Macron's Renaissance Party. Welcome to you too.
Thank you.
So, Sandro Gozzi, let's start with you. I've spoken to some of Macron's allies, even in this chamber, who seem quite uncomfortable about his remarks on China and Taiwan and the US. You're okay with what he says and his positioning?
I'm okay what he said. Then how Politico reported it back is another issue, but I don't think it is important anymore. I'm okay because he didn't say that we are equidistant from China and from the US. He said that the US are our allies, and China is a systemic rival, a competitor, but also a partner.
But then there was the vassal comment in the Netherlands, which is, I suppose, even more provocative to some people.
Yes, but Macron is often provocative in the sense that he says loudly what many people think and do not say. And it is clear that to be useful to our US ally, I will start like that, we need to be more autonomous and we be more credible as Europeans when it comes to foreign policy and defense. So either we want to follow others or we want to be more helpful for others. I think that the Europeans should go for the second option, which is the option which Emmanuel Macron is proposing.
Reinhard Bütikofer, what do you think about Macron's positioning? Was it a problem of timing or content or both?
He just goofed up. The only people who were really happy with his comments were the Chinese, and that should make him think again. There's always a certain level of anti-Americanism that you have to take into account when you have a French leader, but we shouldn't push it to the extreme where we hurt our own interests. And I think that's what he did. Because for Europe, it's not doing the US a favor if we get involved with Indo-Pacific matters, when we show solidarity with the Taiwan democracy. That's our own interest. That's our own values that we hold up. 50% of all the containers in the world go through the Taiwan Strait, day by day. We have a vested interest in stability in that region. And it's just dumb to say that is something that is not our concern.
Sorry, go on.
Very interesting. It's very interesting what he said, because I think Emmanuel Macron fully agrees with him. And by the way, the only country which has a vessel in the Taiwan Strait is France. So from this perspective, I think that France is doing much more than Germany or Italy to ensure the safety and security of Taiwan. And of course, when we talk about Europeans that should be all together in the Taiwan Strait, I'm sure that the first to agree would be Emmanuel Macron. That means that also the other European partners, they should stop only talking and starting doing. And about the status quo of Taiwan, it is clear. It is clear that, we all support the status quo of Taiwan and we all support Taiwan democracy. By the way, France is one country who is pushing the most to get Taiwan into the World Health Organization, for example. So there are facts which say that, it is clear where France or Macron stands on this issue.
Just about the uproar that's been caused by the Chinese ambassador to France, Liu Shaye. He said on French television that these ex-Soviet countries, they don't have actual status in international law because there is no international agreement to confirm their status as a sovereign country. An inaccurate statement, and obviously the United Nations has for a long time recognized the independence of all those countries under international law. But is it fair to blame Macron, Reinhard Bütikofer? Some people are saying that by saying what he said about Taiwan, that he's kind of in a way helped create an atmosphere where the Chinese ambassador could have made such a comment, or is that unfair to pin this on Macron?
I wouldn't blame President Macron for the repulsive statements that the ambassador has made. He is one of the worst wolf warrior diplomats in his own right. And tongue-in-cheek, I'm not even sure who the ambassador was talking to. Maybe because if you take his argument seriously just for a hypothetical second, then it applies not only to the Baltic countries, but also to Russia. Was he trying to tell his Russian friends that the Chinese might question Russian sovereignty over the Russian Far East? Well, I don't think that's what he had in mind, but really that was such a reproachable statement that it underscored the revisionist character of Chinese foreign policy. And I think that he really did a bad service to the international community, but in a way it was a blessing in disguise because you can understand how they think. He just blabbered out what they think.
Do you think the ambassador was testing some sort of idea out? What's your read on it?
I think it was a useless, stupid declaration. From an ambassador point of view, it was outrageous if you think that it comes from a country which is a member of the Security Council of the United Nations, where, as that has been recalled, the United Nations has since a long time recognized the independence and the sovereignty of the Baltic states. So I think I don't have anything to add, and I don't want to see what is behind, because, I mean, it's already enough outrageous what we see.
Do you think he should be declared persona non grata, as some people have said?
I think that someone who comes to Europe and try with words to do what the Russians are doing with action, that means to put in question and to destroy the security and stability order on which we Europeans will build up our peace and security, it would be better to go to another continent.
Sorry, yes, go ahead.
Well, look, this ambassador has not been provocative for the first time. He insulted the French nation during COVID when he implied that they were leaving elderly people in retirement homes to die. He insulted French think tankers when he called them hyenas. He insulted everybody by saying, well, if we take Taiwan, everybody there has to be re-educated. I mean, there is just a limit.
And
I think
you've
it would
signed
be
a
good
letter,
to,
haven't you, to say
yes,
that he should be kicked out?
Almost 100 colleagues from 20 European nations, and he should have been PNG'd, sent back home.
In the light of everything we're saying, what do you make of efforts by the German Chancellor to reactivate the comprehensive agreement on investment between the EU and China? Because a lot of people are saying, well, now is really the wrong time to do this. What do you think? Just a quick one on
Scholz
that.
hasn't said that. Comments that he has made have been overinterpreted. The coalition in Berlin is not at all eager to do that. I think if you look at reality, probably CAI is dead as a doornail. And I think von der Leyen was right when she said before we would look at it again, it would have to be re-evaluated.
What's your position on that, Sandro
But
Rigozzi?
it is very similar. I think that today, from China, what we have to see with China is whether it's a bluff or whether they really want to contribute to prepare the beginning of a diplomatic solution in Ukraine and what will be the real attitude toward Russia.
Yeah.
All the rest must be reevaluated and assessed at the second stage, but the biggest priority now is this one, and it was the biggest priority also for Emmanuel Macron when for the European matters went to Beijing.
And so the Chinese peace plan, if we want to call it that, for Ukraine, you're still pretty skeptical about that, I imagine.
On a personal basis, when I read the peace plan, I thought, very general principles saying nothing. But it is true that in all the capitals, in Paris, in Rome, in Berlin, in Washington, everybody's saying we need to engage, to verify whether the Chinese want to be engaged.
For you.
I wouldn't even call it a peace plan. Nobody should call it a peace plan because it isn't. The plan says every nation has the right to national sovereignty, and then a couple of pages later, the plan says, well, but smaller nations have to give a rebate to their more powerful neighbors because the Russian so-called security interests, which I would translate by saying Russian imperialism has to play a role and should limit Ukrainian sovereignty. That's not a peace plan.
But I agree. What does really China want to do?
Yeah.
This is the point. No, well, of course, I fully agree with what we said has been said about the plan. Behind that.
Got it. Let's wrap up there. That's all for this edition of Talking Europe, and I'd like to thank my guests, Sandro Rigozzi and Reinhard Bütikofer. Do stay with us on France 24.